Hello, welcome to my workshop today. Today we're talking about how to set up or how to implement a customer feedback loop, all right? So this will include some actionable ways. You can do some basic usability testing. You can also do some easy ways to do some easy fixes, and since you have to start somewhere, a framework to kind of start thinking about how your pages should work together and feed into each other, right? So, my name is Dominic Stretty. I am the lead UX designer here at Digital Services Georgia. Probably talked to several of you on the phone, my own user interview sessions, so it's nice to finally put some faces with the name. Again, thank you for joining me here today. And here is the overall agenda. So first, we're kind of lay some ground rules or go over the general idea. We'll get into a little bit of content prioritization, what to focus, what to feature first. We'll go over main versus detail pages, how they're supposed to funnel into each other. And then the last piece will be gathering feedback. So a little bit of, I guess, usability testing, right? Some basic techniques there. So what's the general idea here? There was once a wide sage, no, not really, this is just Yogi Berra, but I always find him entertaining, but for the purposes of this talk, this quote does ring true. One of the main messages that I hope that you guys walk away from this talk is that you think about how your site visitors are moving through your content, moving through your website, moving through your web pages, right? You want to think about what are the most common or most important tasks, and you want to try to make those as self-explanatory and as easy as possible for your audience, right? So, continuing with thinking about your how your customers move through your website. Hopefully, some of you have attended our editor content training courses. You might recall the concept of a customer journey or a journey map. This is just one way to frame up and think about that customer journey. For those of you who haven't attended training, I simply want you to again just think about what are the most important things for people to accomplish on your website. And also a side note here, because Nikhil and some of our keynote speakers talked about how you're never really sure how visitors are entering your site. Might be entering through, I guess, subpages or side windows, side doors, as we call it. You might want all of your pages to be able to answer some of the questions, such as where am I within the website? What can I do on this page? How do I do it? How did I get here, and where can I go from here? Right. The idea is that even if the site visitor is coming in through a side door, they can still orient themselves within your website. Okay. So, like I said, you can learn all about journey mapping in our editor content training. However, if you want some help in the short term about maybe like how this applies, or if we can help you in any way, we're always available via our help desk portal. We've got some refrigerator magnets floating around. Please feel free to submit a ticket. We'll help you in any way possible. That stands for any of the techniques or content discussed in the breakout sessions. So a little bit of feedback on, say, DSGA, right? So here at DSGA, we're constantly trying to get feedback from you and our constituents. There was an extensive requirements gathering phase at the beginning of the D8 project, where we looked at how editors work in agencies. We spoke with advocacy groups in the community, as well as Georgia citizens themselves, to understand what needs weren't being met by the D7 platform. We've touched base with editors along the way to sort of guide key decisions or murky decisions along the way. And now we're poised for an extensive usability testing effort of what's been built on the D8 platform to ensure that we've hit our mark. So basically, feedback helps us to deliver desired outcomes. Now, while we're trying to kind of practice what we preach, we want you guys to kind of do this for your site visitors, and if everybody is sort of gathering feedback from the audiences downstream of them, hopefully we can all shine and produce a better experience for everyone involved, right? So this is one way to sort of think about this customer feedback loop. It's an iterative thing. It's a loop that really never ends, right? So because a website is a living thing that's supposed to be constantly evolving. So essentially what I want to talk to you about today is a scaled down version of what we do at DSGA. The idea is to get regular feedback from what you're building and make sure you're tracking towards desired outcomes. So building something that's useful, efficient, and intuitive, okay? So, since we've got to start somewhere, let's maybe think about content prioritization. It might help to kind of bring a little bit of order to the content that you already have before getting feedback on. But so how do we start? A great way to jumpstart this process is to prioritize your content. The most important and most frequently performed tasks should be highlighted on your site. So they should be higher up in page layouts. They should be, these pages that emphasize these things should be high in your main nav and your information architecture. The page hierarchy and information architecture should reflect the importance and frequency of use, essentially. And three factors that you might want to consider when you're thinking about prioritization of content, both on a single page and on your website at large, are your user needs. So what are your users here to accomplish? Your organizational needs. So what are you trying to achieve as an agency? And what is the page intent? So what is the purpose of each individual page? And before we go any deeper into maybe the prioritization thing, I wanted to include a quick note here about how people use the internet and just sort of usage patterns that I guess I've observed. So when creating sites, a lot of people tend to act like their users are going to pore over each page, read our finely crafted text, and figure out how we've got things organized, and carefully lay out options before deciding what to click. Right? It seems like most visitors, what visitors tend to do, if we're lucky, is glance at a new page, scan through some text, and then click on the first thing that vaguely resembles what they're looking for. So, it makes sense that we imagine this rational, attentive user that has some level of domain knowledge of our agency. It's only natural to assume that other people use the web in the same way that we do. The reality is most people's experience is similar to, reading a billboard driving down the highway at 60 miles an hour. They're in a rush. They don't have the domain knowledge that we do. They probably have a pressing task that you're trying to accomplish. So that just sort of bears in mind that you want to again prioritize these most important and most frequently used tasks. Get them the task done and get them out essentially. So this sort of brings us a little bit to sort of page flow. So how should your pages work together for the purposes, and for the purposes of this talk, we're going to break it down in terms of main versus detailed pages, okay? So to finish off this driving analogy that I sort of led with, your main pages should largely be directing traffic. Your detailed pages are the destinations within your website. So you will likely have some call outs about particularly important tasks or information on your web pages, but generally speaking, you want them to funnel visitors towards your detailed pages so that they can get the information and take the actions that they need. So what makes for, let's say, an effective main page, right? Well, your main pages, you want them to be highly visible, both in the site navigation, as well as just the general layout of the page, right? They're typically going to have more graphical page elements on them. Some examples as far as content types might be your site's homepage, landing pages, and your service and program pages. Service and program is new with D8. You guys may or may not be familiar with that, but yeah, with our content training and some of our other workshops, we're going to flesh sort of the definition of what that is about. But again, their purpose is to be the traffic hubs of your website. Okay? For main pages, we want to focus on providing just enough information to effectively direct site visitors to the appropriate destination. Also, action-oriented language helps the user understand what's the next step in the process. So think about your buttons on your page. You want those to be action-oriented language. Your site links, your link text as well. It helps the user hopefully understand what the next step in this process will be. So, with that said, you also want to limit your buttons. It's always important to sort of limit the amount of buttons and eye-catching graphical elements on the page, because essentially if everything is a button, then nothing is a button. If there's any Incredibles fans out there in the audience today. So, then what about detail pages, right? So what makes for an effective detail page? Your detail pages are going to be about a specific topic or about a program or process, right? These pages tend to show up lower in the main menu, if at all. Right? These are your deep pages, your deep links within the website. You want to provide enough detail, but not drown your users. You know, we're getting into a little bit of sort of information pacing here. User feedback can help with the pacing to kind of understand like what level of detail is appropriate for each page and how you sort of wade into that. But and we'll get into more of that later. But for complicated tasks that require a lot of information, you can generally trust that the more important that piece of information is to a person, the longer of a journey they're willing to go on to get the information they need and accomplish that task. Now, you know, this is not necessarily a reason to you know, bury an important call to action at the end of a very long informational rabbit hole. Again, we want those key tasks and those frequently performed tasks to be prioritized, but I know a lot of you guys have tasks and information within the website that are fairly robust, and just again trying to emphasize that content pacing piece of this. So while you might have more than one CTA on a main page, you should only ever have one on a detail page. Again, this is one of those things where if everything is a button, then nothing is a button. Detail pages need to be focused, direct, and towards one particular activity, one particular action. So, Rachel will get into some of these concepts in much greater detail. I believe you guys just came from her workshop. But generally speaking, both on main pages and detail pages, you want to use common language, right? So the semantics should be familiar to the audience on that page. You want to use plenty of white space to support scanning and to keep them from feeling cluttered. And you also want to use high quality imagery and videos that supports the narrative on the page. Again, this all sort of drives towards one direction, one purpose, one activity, right? So, sort of begs the question of how do you know when you've done it right? So, you get a feel for that by getting feedback, by doing usability testing. We've sort of gone through a lot of our content on our website. Hopefully at this point, we've sort of tried to make our pages focused and make our main pages drive towards our detail pages. Now, let's get a sense of how good of a job we've done. Now, I'm trying to set a little bit of a low bar here. So if you want to have a great site, then you have to test it. But getting some feedback from users is better than getting no feedback at all, right? The earlier you test, often the greater impact that testing and feedback can have. Now, the purpose of testing should not necessarily be to prove or disprove any single thing. It's merely just to inform your judgment. So no single testing session should be held up as a golden solution to your problem. You should be taking lessons learned as just another data point that helps inform your judgment. These are not prescriptions, right? So it's good to remain open-minded about new information and also flexible in how you think about your website and how it should be laid out. So now when it comes to participants and how frequent to gather feedback, don't be afraid to ask your friends, your neighbors, professional network. The main thing is to keep in mind here to not get hung up on who to test with and just to get feedback from someone. You want to get that ball rolling, not necessarily let perfection be the enemy of good enough. We want to get some feedback. And again, this is just another data point to help inform your opinion. 3 or 4 participants generally tends to uncover about 80% of the issues with a site or depending on the domain of what you're testing. And for recruitment, you just need a few people who have enough experience, enough web experience or domain knowledge to know the basics. So you don't need a perfect participant. So, getting into just the particulars or particular approaches for how to test or how to get feedback. As far as I guess some of this structuring of content and that sort of thing. I usually, and a lot of other people tend to use a little bit of benchmarking as well to kind of get that ball rolling. So you can visit other agency sites from another state. Benchmarking is a quick and easy way to generate ideas and approaches. Keep in mind that competitor sites might be serving visitor needs that don't align with your audience. So just take this as inspiration that you're going to put your own spin on, right? So you can take a concept that works and come up with your own version of it that's tailored towards your audience's needs. Now, when you're drafting pages out, when you're laying pages out, another thing that I've seen that's been effective is drafting those things out in Word or PowerPoint page drafts. So editors can flesh out a page in a Word doc or PowerPoint slide and put that in front of someone to get feedback. The idea here is not to get design critique, but rather just to see if they get it. And Word and PowerPoint are not, again, like a golden bullet or anything like that. The idea here is just to use whatever tool that you're comfortable with to quickly get an output, get something in front of somebody that they can react to, right? And again, it's not a design critique, it's just to try to understand, does this person get it? Do they intuitively understand what the purpose of this page is and what the main action is? You probably have to experiment with fidelity and which page elements give away the intent. But that's a good piece of information to come away with. What triggers your audience? What triggers that light bulb to go off? About, oh, this is the thing that I'm supposed to do on this page. Now, the things you're trying to learn from page drafts or wireframes, if that's what you want to call them, can include. Does the page layout or the hierarchy emphasize the right content? Does it direct traffic effectively? It's a main page, going back to that concept. Can people quickly make sense of the page and wayfind effectively? Does your audience understand the language that you're using? Going back to the semantics piece. Do you have different audiences for different pages? That might be one reason why you might want to shift your vocabulary to cater to different audiences. I know a number of agencies sort of have different populations that they're serving. And overall, do people get what the purpose of the page is? If you have enough pages that are self-explanatory, you can eventually say that about your overall site. So start small, build, iterate, and eventually you will see the returns of that effort. So content ranking is a really versatile user feedback tool. You could potentially cluster all of the content on your website into a small number of labels, maybe 6 or 10 labels. I'm not sure exactly how the content on your site would split up. But the idea here is to rank the items in order of importance. The versatility shows up because then you can turn around and use the same technique with individual page elements. So you can zoom in or out with this technique as much as you want to try to get a sense of how people would like the information to be presented to them, what's important to people, what sort of order of operations makes sense to your audience. Both of which, again, helps you understand what to emphasize and prioritize. This can be done in something as simple as like a Word doc, just like a bulleted list, something like that. Put that in front of someone, just have them number straight down the page. If you want to do maybe a little bit of number crunching on this afterwards, maybe if you do this activity with 3, 5, 7, 10 people, then you can maybe throw that into a spreadsheet. You want a quick formula and get your averages, your average rankings for these type of things. Again, start small, but then you can kind of build on what you're doing as you go. So if you want to take maybe the content ranking a step further, you can do another personal favorite of mine is a card sorting, right? So the basic concept here is you hand your participant a stack of Post-it notes or index cards, right? These cards are going to have various topics from your website already written on them. You kind of have to experiment a little bit about the scope of what you're testing here. But the idea here is that participants organize the cards or the Post-it notes into categories and then give that category a name. So this gives you an idea of how people organize information in their head. It can also give you some keywords to help inform your information architecture. And what are the triggers, what are the things that are going to make that light bulb go off in somebody's head? Maybe even a little bit of semantics as well. Now another thing is also heat maps. Now typically when I've done these in the past, I want to sit down with the participant and give them some sort of context by explaining what type of user they are or what they're looking for. If you're doing this by yourself, maybe like a rough sketch of a page or maybe one of those Word or PowerPoint drafts, I would recommend doing that just to kind of cue up the activity for the person. The first click test gives you a sense of what grabs people's attention. You can even do this with, as I said, a rough sketch or a wireframe. And this is great for new page layouts. This is also great for new content. But don't forget that also DSGA can help you guys out with this and provide heat maps with thousands of clicks, because we're actively tracking a lot of this stuff for you already. Right? But again, if it's for a new page or a new content layout that maybe you want to experiment with and get a quick temperature check on, you can do it yourself to kind of get an idea of what to expect. And then finally, user interviews. So don't miss a chance to extract insights if the opportunity presents itself to talk to actual site visitors. This could happen at an agency event, fielding a customer support call if you're the type of frontline correspondent for your agency. Really, anytime that your agency engages with the public is an opportunity to get new insights and understand how you can help make these common tasks easier. So the main things you want to try to understand during a user interview are what confuses people, what your site's intentions are, and what their priorities are. How do they think about information? How would they like to complete a task? What is the preferred order of operations, right? And then essentially at the end of this, you want to rinse and repeat. So the process should be repeated numerous times. Each iteration will improve your website. Build, gather feedback, and then repeat. Having a great website is like setting up a garden. It's not something you just set up and walk away from. It's something you have to continually tend to and adapt to evolving user needs, right? Now, if you guys want to take a stab at some of this stuff, again, these are fairly low fidelity activities. These are the types of things that you can even turn over, say like the heuristics page that I handed out, sketch down maybe like some concepts on a particular page, or sketch out a rough wireframe of what a page might look like. You guys are all here to kind of learn how to do this stuff together. Might be a decent opportunity to try your hand at this and try to get a sense of what triggers people and maybe get feedback from some of the other GOVTalk attendees. I know Rachel's activity was fairly extensive, so and I think we're running a little bit short on time, so I'll leave this as optional. But want to leave a little bit of time here at the end for questions. Does anybody? Are there any questions with any of the stuff that I covered?
I have a quick one. In DA, are the menus, like the impact of the menus being minimized, or they're still there and still high in priority? Because I feel like we kind of rely on menus pretty heavily for our
Are we
site.
talking about the sort of the top navigation? Yeah, they're generally going to be in the same place. I mean, they're prominent on all of the pages. They have a standard look and feel. I think we sell the same number of slots, and like 7 or 8 nav items. But no, I wouldn't say that they've been changed substantially in any way as far as visibility and how they function.
And do you, like in some of your user testing and studies, have you noticed any leaning towards anything? Like, do people look at the menus last, or they're looking at the things on the page first, or depends?
I think it's, if anything, the thing that surprises me is how little that compared to maybe like Google searches or something like that, how far down the list of things people initially knee-jerk want to interact with. Usually the top nav is, yeah, sure, some people interact with that, maybe if they know kind of what they're looking for, but generally people are being served to these sites via Google searches. But again, it's one other element, that top nav, that helps people orient themselves or find other information. Doesn't mean they're not going to click around on it, but the information that we've seen as far as user testing, it's typically not like the first thing that they're interacting with. So it matters, but it's not like the number one thing.
Okay. And y'all talk about adding imagery to kind of break up. Partner revenue, really utilitarian site. I mean, and they want to add images, but I'm always like, an image of what? To me, it's just lame. But, do we give them an image just to break it up? And, what's more important, I guess, is that the image is relatable, or that it just kind of
I wouldn't necessarily think about it in terms of relatability. I mean, sure, like, I mean, taxes is maybe, yeah, something everybody has to do, but, and also, like, the subject matter is really dense as well. So, I mean, there's inevitably just going to be a lot of text to wade through. I think more so than anything, kind of what I was driving at before was just trying to make sure that your imagery supports and drives towards a narrative. While, yeah, you know, showing a photo of somebody filling out their taxes might not be the most riveting thing. You know, it might be helpful to maybe show an image of maybe like a small thumbnail of what this tax form looks like. You know, we're going to be covering a particular tax form on this page. This is generally what you're looking for. Maybe something like that serves a purpose and maybe you know, conveys at least a part of the information that you're trying to convey on that page. You know, the old adage of pictures worth 1,000 words. Hopefully, you can kind of get the ball rolling with the imagery videos that you use. Anybody else? I think I might give you back a little bit of time. I think we're close on to the end anyway. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys, let me go see.